White Sox fans, welcome back. We are #back. Season 7, Episode 1. Tony Marchese alongside Springs Training Steve, no longer on the X machine, so we can't call him Spring Training Overreactor. We'll get to that in a minute. And we've got our guy, Bez Beyond the Pen. He's no longer Sox Insane. You can find him at Bez Beyond the Pen on X. Guys, it's a new year, new Sox, same questions that we've always had. Welcome in. It's been a while, but as I said, we are #back. How are both of you guys doing today? Bez, I'll go to you first because you are here today with us, and then we'll go to the guy that no longer speaks with us online.
Tony, I'm doing pretty well. Glad to share these airwaves again with you two fine gentlemen and talk about and hopefully find some answers about the 2025 Chicago White Sox. And with spring training right around the corner, I don't know what we're going to do without the spring training overreactor.
Hey, yo, boys. Happy Waffle Wednesday. Good to be back. Season 7. Hard to believe already. I will say this as it relates to spring training and the upcoming season overall. I can't wait until we get past opening day so that we no longer have to hear every single day that number 121 being referenced by members of the media. I'm tired of it already, but we know we've got a little bit over a month left of having to hear this. It will be a good day when that subsides and goes away completely and they can just focus on trying to play baseball.
I have a sneaky suspicion that they are going to talk about 121 well into the year, Steven. So I hope that that's the case. This team does something. Well, I mean, it could be a bad headline too. We don't want that. But I have a feeling we're going to hear about this one well into the season. That's just my thought on it. Bez?
I would have to agree. We're going to hear about 121 for a while. That's not going to go away anytime soon until they start winning some ball games. Maybe they'll get off to a hot start in April. Maybe like those first 2 or 3 weeks, they go, they're above 500, playing some good baseball somehow. And then maybe people will start talking about that. And then the 70 win, 75 win predictions will start coming out and we'll get into some real fun.
That sounds horrendous, honestly. But
you'd rather hear about 121.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if I want to start getting into people with some crazy takes on 75 wins for this squad, but it'll be interesting to see how the roster shakes out and what they do out of the gate. They did finish the year kind of hot. I mean, we can.
They did win 5 out of 6 close, so you could argue that they do have momentum going into the season.
Yeah, and they currently, as Stephen, you pointed out to me on January 1st, they are no longer in last place now. So we do have some positive momentum, boys, so to speak. We're going to get into a couple of topics here today. I wanted to ask you guys some initial spring training thoughts. I know it's been a while since we've been on these airwaves, but spring training is here. Pitchers and catchers have reported. They are back in Arizona. I know, Steven, you normally head on down there and sometimes enjoy some spring training weather and all of that good stuff. I myself have been to Arizona once, and I wish I was there right now because it's freezing. It's absolutely freezing here in Chicago. Steve, I know you're going through it over there in Northwest Indiana as well, but the one thing I like about spring training is the fact that I can look on my television screen or on my phone and see people enjoying some warm weather, and it signals that summer is on its way, hopefully. But both of you, I'll toss it to Bez first, and then we'll go to Steve again. But give me your initial thoughts on what you've seen so far in spring training.
Well, I mean, just looking at the list of names and players in there, it's hard to feel good about a lot of these things. Some of the NRIs are kind of interesting. Overall, nothing to get too excited about, though. They've got, I think, about 70 players in camp, which is crazy. And even last year, they set the franchise record for most players in camp. So it's one big audition for who wants to be a Major League Baseball player in 2025. So there's some interesting roster battles coming up. And that's kind of all I've really got to look forward to. I'm not really a big spring training person. I don't pay too close of attention to it, but I'm just following online.
I think with the guys that they have brought on, the non-roster invitees, they're just throwing stuff at the wall to kind of see what's going to stick and what isn't. Obviously, they have a lot of at-bats and a lot of playing time at their disposal right now to just kind of fuck around with and see what they can do. And, just try to see if you can catch lightning in a bottle with guys for a couple of months, ultimately to try to deal them. So, a lot of these veteran guys that they've brought on here, that's kind of just what this is going to be here for, the first couple of months. And honestly, I mean, you see a lot of, people kind of, getting up in arms a little bit about some of the roster construction and some of the seeming redundancies that are taking place right now. But really, it's just not worth getting that upset about. I mean, the herd is going to thin itself out ultimately. And, the chips are going to kind of fall where they are until some of the guys in this, top tier farm system start coming up eventually.
For spring training, or formerly known as spring training overreactor, you're telling people don't overreact. I don't know what's going on here. This is a weird version of Steven, isn't it, Buzz? It's like,
right. It's very weird. I was, I guess I'll be the one to say it. I think Venable needs to come in and set the tone. You've got to come into camp in Arizona and set the tone. That's what it boils down to. But yeah, I don't know who this Steven person is and where NWI Steve has gone.
I'm getting kind of scared.
New year, new me, all that bullshit,
He's in the best shape of his life, he thinks.
I'm not going that far.
But Miguel Vargas is. Miguel Vargas has put on 20 pounds, and then they didn't specify muscle. They just said they put on 20 pounds. So,
do you guys believe it's muscle? Steven, you're a big workout guy. Evaluate what's going on with Miguel Vargas. Is this, Domino's Pizza, the Yohan Moncada Twinkie plan, 20 pounds, or is this?
That's kind of what it looked like to me, because he looked a little pudgy in the midsection there. To me, it definitely was not looking like the 20 pounds of muscle, best shape of my life kind of thing that we hear guys talking about just every year out of spring training. I saw that and I was like, maybe need to get with a dietitian on this.
I like that they asked him if the ball was going farther, and he said not really.
Did he really?
Yeah, I think it was. It might have been Daryl Van Schouwen asked him in one of those locker room interviews, and I'm not positive. Don't quote me on it being Daryl, but I saw a video and they asked him has it helped you hit the ball farther? And he was like, yeah, I mean a little bit, not too much. And I was like, that's kind of a red flag for me, but teach their own. Maybe he just feels heavier now. I don't know.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear him say that. He had a big smile on his face, very happy to tell it, and he was doughy, so he just looked fat and happy to me. So I don't know. Maybe some extra weight behind those swings. We'll see.
That maybe it'll help. Who knows? He'll be in a position battle, seemingly. I would think for some at bats, unless they just hand him the job, but. Some of these NRI names are interesting. We'll get to that in a little bit. Steven, I know you're no longer online, but you're still online with On Tap Sportsnet, and you've produced a couple 2-3 pieces over the past week and a half here. In regards to some White Sox pitching, we want to kick it off with some pitching here. Ethan Katz did some media rounds. There was some interesting quotes from Noah Schultz on your guy, Brian Bannister. Why don't you take it away with what's going on over on the pitching side of spring training here?
Well, look, Ethan Katz was, like you said, making a lot of the media rounds, kind of talking about some of the improvements that he's looking for out of guys like Jonathan Cannon, just talking about some of the things that we need to see from a progression standpoint. So that was one of the pieces that I wrote last week, looking at, Jonathan Cannon, Davis Martin, and Drew Thorpe, three guys in particular that have not really cemented themselves in their rotation spots yet, but could definitely get to that point. But they all have things that they need to improve upon here in the near term in order to be more effective. We saw glimpses from each of those three last year that, hey, there could be something there, but there's refinement that is absolutely going to be needed. And we talked about during Rebuild 2.0. The one thing that didn't happen is we didn't see continued development at the major league level. It's like they would get there and then things would just stop. That's something that we can't continue to see happen here as Rebuild 3.0 takes course. And that was another thing that I wrote about just from the developmental standpoint, and with Brian Bannister, Ethan Katz, and the pitching hierarchy in particular, needing to continually get these guys making steady improvements so that they can really maximize who they are going to be as pitchers. So, and then as it relates to Brian Bannister, also Noah Schultz, the lauded left-handed pitching prospect, top left-handed pitching prospect in the entire sport, had one of his first bullpen sessions thrown in front of Brian Bannister, and his quote was, "It's funny, everything he says, it's just like magic, like right away, it works." Helping with everything, all the pitches, just mindset with everything. Definitely a guy that I'm happy he's on our side. So, as I say frequently, in Bannister we trust.
So I've got a question for both of you on this quote. If we look into our, magic crystal ball, will that quote be good for the White Sox in 3 years, or will it blow up in Noah Schultz's face? If you had to make a prediction.
I think it's going to be somewhere in the middle.
Only time will tell.
I think that's a dangerous quote. I think it's a very dangerous quote.
Enough.
We've tried some cool and tough quotes, like I'm going to show up at 7:00 every day and we're going to, be ready to kick ass. We've had the infamous post from the account formerly known as NBC Sports Chicago White Sox. Waiting for the division to show up. Every time it seems like we do something like that, it seems to come back and bite us in the ass. I liked the quote, though. Like, we all know that Steven here is like the leader of the Bannister bandwagon. When you get the top prospect,
bot.
I like the leader of the bandwagon, but you could call yourself a Bannister bot if you so choose. I just feel like we have got a bad history of these things that should be, fun, coming back to bite us in the ass. And maybe it's a different time around here. I just wanted to get your guys' sense of where that's going to lead us to. But Bez, you got any thoughts on some of this pitching stuff?
I mean, the pitching stuff is great. It's really the only thing you can hang your hat on with this team. I mean, they've always had a pretty decent track record of developing pitchers. There's been a lot of wins over the years. The talent identification is there. Clearly, we've got some two top pitching prospects in the entire sport. But you still need to hit the ball and you need to score runs because those guys can't pitch.
Confirmed.
There you go. Tony confirmed, Steve. There's my source. So, I'm hoping that starts to develop quickly here because it's looking grim when I look at this roster and I see like the majority of it, as far as position players, probably won't be on the team next year, which is exactly what you want in a rebuilding year. A bunch of players who take up at bats and aren't going to be here next year. So, but the pitching looks nice.
I think one of the aspects that as a fan base we really need to do right now is just take a step back here. And I'm sure people are probably doing this in the online world already about making proclamations about this team with, where they're at from a farm system ranking standpoint. And this is another thing I talked about in one of my pieces last week was just that the fact that if we learned nothing from Rebuild 2.0, we're just going to keep, it seems like we're making potentially the same mistakes here. I think collectively as a fan base, take a step back here. Let these guys develop. Have that understanding that, look, a lot of these prospects are not going to pan out. So making proclamations like, okay, we've got two aces at the top of the rotation in Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith. Let's not do that. Let's not sit here and say that, oh, we've got a middle of the order bat in Colson Montgomery. And please, for the love of God, I'm begging baseball analysts, and I saw this in the Fangraphs article where they interviewed Paul Janisch earlier this week. For the love of God, people, stop using Ben Zobrist as a player comp for guys that just because they stand in multiple different spots on the diamond. Okay, find a different comp. Ben Zobrist was a fucking phenomenal baseball player. Chase Mydroth, that ain't gonna be Ben Zobrist.
I think Ben Zobrist is the only super utility player in the history of the sport. I don't think there's anyone that's ever played more than 3 positions ever. But yeah, it's pretty rough out there, Steve. But don't tell people how to fan, just let them be as excited as possible and get up for the letdown.
I mean, listen, I just wish that collectively people would understand this thing, that it's not everything is going to go according to plan. In fact, a lot of things aren't going to go according to plan. The hope is that more things work in a positive direction than they did during the course of Rebuild 2.0, but we don't know that right now. We don't know if the changes foundationally from a player development standpoint are going to yield success at the corner of 35th and Shields. We just simply don't know that. But to make these statements about these things and say, oh, well, hey, we've got a top 5 farm system again, Baseball America and ESPN have them. So, hey,
does it feel like a top 5 farm system to you guys? Because to me, it doesn't.
To me, it doesn't. To me, it feels extremely top heavy. And like, I'm old enough to remember when this team in Rebuild 2.0 had 3 guys that were consensus top 5 prospects in the sport, and things didn't pan out particularly well from that aspect of things. So none of these guys
is that part of the mistrust though? Because
100%.
I mean, like the Rebuild 2.0 felt like it was like a surefire thing, and it was kind of marketed that way. When you've got guys labeled as phenoms, and Luis Robert Jr. is the Under Armour mannequin, and you've got
Cuban
all
Mike
of this.
Trout.
Yeah, I mean, there was we had the Cuban Shohei Ohtani too, and Oscar Colas. He's still around, but he hasn't showed me anything damn near Shohei Ohtani.
They don't let him play. If the spot opens up, they got to grab someone to block him. That's how they roll with Oscar Colas. It's like, no, sorry, buddy. They should just trade him at this point. But
yeah,
it does not feel like a top 5 farm system. And Keith Law, forever you feel about him. He didn't rank Montgomery in the top 100. He had them like 12th. And he also went on to say that the state of minor league baseball in general was like, it was hard for him to find 100 players that he thinks are going to be good major league players. So there's that aspect to it as well, for whatever that's worth.
To me, it feels like there's not a lot of positive spin. And there is some out there when people have ranked at a top 5 farm system, sure. But in comparison to where we were in 2016, 17, 18, around in that time period, it just feels like none of this has any of the same level of marketing behind it, almost is the word that I want to choose. I know I went on a ramble to Steve the other day and via text on how Rick Hahn was a master marketer, it felt like, in promoting that farm system. And my feeling is this goes one of 2 ways. Either one, because Getz is sort of working in silence with these guys, it's going to lower the expectations and maybe allow them to develop a little bit better than what the pressure was on some of the White Sox farm system guys. Or B, it's really not good, and we're going to be stuck in baseball hell for a lot longer. And either way that shakes out, we don't know at this juncture, but I just don't feel like there is anywhere near the level of hype for White Sox prospects anymore that we had with this last crop. And it makes me curious to know, are they not that great at evaluating talent? I mean, we saw I draw the comparison back to Chris Sale trade, right? Obviously, Yohan Moncada comes back. You get Michael Kopech out of that deal. Sure, the other throw-ins don't pan out. but you're getting a very hyped prospect. There's still hyped prospects in the game of baseball right now. I don't feel like the White Sox got anybody that jumps off the page in any of these deals as like someone that all of baseball covets.
Kyle
And I
Teal's
just
about
I
the
don't
closest
feel like
one.
it's
It
a
seems
bad
like.
thing though. Like we've talked about. I mean, maybe having the lower level of expectations this time around could be a good thing. Do we know if it will be? Obviously, we don't. I mean, at this point, it's, once they get into the system here, then it's about the player development, and it's going to be all about, are the changes that they've made beneath the surface, are they going to pan out, and are they going to have real tangible impact on these guys? That's, I think, really the key. So just me looking at it, I think not having this system be as highly lauded, and not seeing people, making a custom jersey with 10 prospect names on it of, guys that are going to be superstars or part of a quote unquote core. I don't think that that's a bad thing. Let these guys do what they're going to do. Some of them are going to develop, a lot of them aren't. And let's ultimately see where the chips fall.
Just wait and see.
People are going to get hashtag mad online regardless. It's just going to happen. It's just going to happen. But
That's what people online do.
My thought process here is exactly what Steve said. Because the expectations aren't higher, maybe that allows them to work through a couple of 2-3 things, and you develop a guy that maybe we weren't all looking at saying this guy's going to be a star, and you get something that comes out of the woodwork. It feels like the reverse of the last rebuild, and I don't think that that's a bad thing. I really don't. I don't think that's a bad thing at all. Besnik.
I don't either.
Switching gears.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say
I
would love to believe that. I have a hard time believing that. We'll just have to wait and see.
I do as well, but it's for better or for worse. That's where we're at, right?
Definitely.
Is what it is. Bez, you had some work over at OnTapSportsNet.com the other day. I forget the exact title of this, but it had to do with Luis Robert, the signing of Michael A. Taylor, and a White Sox roster crunch that maybe not everybody saw coming, with the sort of a flurry of, I guess, non-roster invitees, some minor league contracts that were handed out, a couple of major league contracts handed out as well. Want to catch everybody up on all of the news stuff here so we can walk through some of those transactions as you're speaking through this. But it was a very interesting theory, and it involves Luis Robert DHing.
So after that deal went down, or shortly before it, Chris Getz said something about keeping Robert fresh. So then they go and sign Michael A. Taylor, and the vision kind of starts to become a little more clear, where you get Taylor, who is a pretty elite defender. If you look up his StatCast page, I mean, he is in the high 90s over the last few years. So arguably an even better defender than Luis Robert. So you still have great defense out there. And then you can put Robert at DH, let him focus on hitting, keep his legs fresh. I like the idea. I don't think I can't remember a White Sox team in recent memory that had 5 outfielders on the roster. So that's a little different. So I like the idea of doing that in the short term. Taylor gives them some insurance in case they do trade Robert, because you really don't have another center fielder on the roster. We saw Dominic Fletcher out there last year, and he is definitely not a center fielder. I look like Tauchman played maybe like 70 games for the Cubs in center. So I feel like that might've been an emergency situation. So I guess maybe he can kind of fake it, but you have a bona fide center fielder in case you do trade Luis Robert, and you keep him healthy, you keep him in the lineup, and hopefully he hits and keeps his trade value pointing in the right direction. But then they made some other moves that may have clouded that a little bit. But I like that initial move there. It's something that it's something that the Twins did with Byron Buxton a couple of years ago to keep that guy in the lineup, and it helped them make the playoffs. Not that the White Sox are any in danger of making the playoffs, but I like the idea. I like the thought process behind that move.
Besnik, you've got a question in from our guy, Matt Redacted. Matt, hope you're doing well. Bez, you got to answer this. The question comes in, are you telling me that Vaughn and Tony Stepkid weren't valid outfield depth options if you're listening on audio? That is a question in from Matthew. Besnik.
That's a hard no, Matthew. That's a hard no. They were not valid depth. And by the way, when you're a starting right fielder, you're not depth. You're the starter. They were starters. They weren't that either.
First base platoon.
Oh, Matt. First base platoon and right.
Yeah, first base platoon and right. Steven, do you have thoughts on Luis Robert Jr. DHing? Will that help you roll more R's this season?
It would be nice if it would help me to roll more R's during the course of the season. The thing that I am just really wondering about, though, is, if this idea is something that does come to fruition, it's not really going to help Luis Robert's trade value a lot, because a lot of his value is dependent on being an elite defender at a premium up the middle position. So if you're talking about a guy that, we have concerns about his legs and we have to, kind of baby him a little bit to keep his bat in the lineup, your premium on the return isn't going to be what it would for someone that you can pencil in to center field for 150 to 155 games. So I just look at it from that perspective. Now, again, if he hits enough, maybe that will counterbalance that side of the equation here. But, things were so bad offensively for him last year. And that was a concern that I had, was just, given the lack of protection around him, were we going to see him start to develop bad habits and chasing a lot of sliders out of the zone? And we did see that ultimately once he came back from the hip flexor injury again. And that is going to be another valid concern heading into the season here, is where is Luis Robert at mentally? And from an offensive approach standpoint, where is he going to be? And that's where you have to hope that the acquisition of Ryan Fuller, coming in here to try to be the director of hitting now, basically trying to, be the counterpart to my guy, Brian Bannister, on the pitching side of the equation here. Hopefully this is something that we'll start to see organizationally, is a, kind of top-down approach of saying, hey, okay, this is what we are looking to try to accomplish offensively. And if Luis Robert Jr. can go and implement some of those things, and we see offensive performance similar to 2023, then maybe him DHing at times will not have that much of a bearing on his trade value, because I think we all are kind of the mindset that if things go really well for him over the first 3 months of the season, that he's not going to be here come late July. I think we're all in agreement there, right?
I would tend to agree with that. Do you think that there's a possibility that he still moves before opening day? If there's an injury and again, like contending team?
Yeah, it's possible. I feel like from a value standpoint, he's a depressed asset right now. And so
the price is still sky high according to reports.
And that's fine. I mean, you can always set a high price on things. It doesn't mean that anybody's, willing to pay it ultimately. I have a hard time believing that someone is going to pull the trigger on this deal during the course of Cactus League play, personally.
You have the same mindset, Bez?
Yeah, I don't expect it. Also, though, it wouldn't surprise me. I still think the value's there. I don't know. I mean, let's see what he does in spring training. Is he healthy? Is he moving well? Scouts can pick up on this stuff, that he looks like the 2023 version of himself, and maybe there is an injury. So I don't know. I think a lot of the stars kind of have to align there for it to happen that soon. But it wouldn't surprise me. I think the most important thing is to keep him in the lineup every day and healthy. He still has to showcase his defense, because that is part of his value, but DHing a couple days a week, you can still do that. So it'll be interesting to see how Venable manages all of that. Because I think he's going to have a lot on his plate in year one as far as how he's going to distribute playing time and at-bats with veterans and guys coming up and trying to keep Robert healthy. So it's going to be interesting, or I should say mildly interesting.
I keep going back to the fact that there is no more Mr. Clean on this White Sox coaching staff. And I just, it'll be interesting to see what kind of nickname Will Venable earns himself through the first year of the season. Steve, you got any new nicknames?
You know,
I think
would
you
be
were the
awesome.
one that coined Mr. Clean.
What would be awesome is if he didn't need a nickname. If he was just,
there you go,
a competent manager. Let's try that.
Do you guys have first impressions on some of his media that he's done?
I think it's just, very vanilla to this point. I mean, there hasn't really been anything that has jumped off the page to me. And I almost think that that's to be expected. He does seem to be a pretty well thought out guy. So it almost strikes me as he's not trying to put the cart before the horse and make any grand proclamations on things and just kind of trying to slow play a lot of stuff.
His predecessor didn't do that. So
that's what I was going to say. There's not the rah-rah stuff. There isn't, we're going to kick your ass at 7:00. Where looking back on that, I'm like, man, he was reading prepared comments for that press conference and everything like after that. And then when the shit hit the fan and they started out like 7-21, all the coach speak was gone. He ran out of it and he was just, you could tell, in over his head and just complete toast. But yeah, Venable's been pretty laid back and low key. Not a whole lot of coach speak, and that's a good thing.
The one comparison that I'll make, I mean, maybe comparison isn't the right word, but maybe something that he learned from the last guy he worked under, Bruce Bochy. I mean, Bruce Bochy's won 4 World Series over the course of his career. He's going to go to the Hall of Fame. He's won World Series with multiple different organizations, and he was relatively boring. You think back to his time, whether it was, when he first started out with the Padres, and then when he went to the Giants, even when he's in the midst of that 3 championships in a 5-year one, like there wasn't any, big media moments that came out of Bruce Bochy. There weren't any, fiery post games or anything like that. He just was, he would almost kind of lull you to sleep with his analysis and talking about the game. And maybe that's something that Will Venable picked up working under him and kind of realized that, hey, this is probably more in line with my personality. And I saw it worked really well for this guy. He's got 4 rings on his hand. So maybe this is who we will see from Will Venable. And I think that probably in some ways could be a good thing. So like I said, it would be awesome if he's just a good manager and doesn't need a silly nickname or a silly shtick.
I've got a tinfoil hat theory though about Venable. When I saw when I saw a picture of Venable standing there, Chris Getz on one side, Jed Hoyer on the right, and we know that Venable spent time with the Cubs. So, is he a double agent?
Are you saying that this is a possible hashtag inside job?
It could be a hashtag inside job. Introducing Getz to Jed Hoyer. I don't know. Like, hey, come meet Jed. Could be a double agent. We'll see. We'll have to. The story's developing. Working to confirm.
I saw that picture too. I wasn't quite sure what was going on with that, but it's an interesting tinfoil hat theory there, Bez. That's coming in hot on season 7, episode 1. First tinfoil hat time of the Sox on Tap 7th season, brought to you by Bez Beyond the Pen. All right, where were we here? We were talking a little Luis Robert. We were talking about his trade value, everything. I do want to get to the Joey Gallo ad because it used to be Kenny that always got his guy. Does Getz have the ability to always go get Kenny's guys? Because that's what I'm seeing there. They could be Jerry's guys. That's a good point.
Yeah.
What do you guys think of this Joey Gallo ad?
I mean, I guess the one thing that he can do is, he historically has hit home runs. Now, the last couple of years, the production has certainly waned. And I know Sox fans, you go back, 3, 4 years, we're clamoring for Joey Gallo to be the fix in right field. I was against it at the time. And look, as I talked about earlier on the show, they've got a lot of at bats to play with. I've been very outspoken about the fact that I don't need to see Andrew Vaughn anymore. If you actually look at the splits, Joey Gallo did have a slightly higher OPS against right-handed pitching a year ago than Andrew Vaughn did. A lot of that is obviously due to, Joey Gallo still taking a ton of walks. He just doesn't have an aesthetically pleasing game. I mean, he really is the true 3 outcome guy. And it just, the problem now is the strikeouts are getting at such an exponential rate that it's basically offsetting, the home runs and the walks when they come into play. For a team that desperately needs home runs and desperately needs offense, I guess I can somewhat understand why they would take the chance to try to catch lightning in a bottle for a couple of months. But I don't know that there's anything left there, to be completely honest.
The bat looks pretty cooked. I mean, the slugging percentage last year was below 400. I mean, that is you are
Not
getting
good.
into a slap hitter territory there. But the dude can still pick it at first base. I mean, the outs above average are like around 7. The walk rate's around 10. So there's something there if you want to put him at first base and DH Andrew Vaughn. That keeps Vaughn off the infield dirt, which is good. It potentially even keeps Vaughn out of the everyday lineup, which is also good. So it could kind of be a net positive, but then kind of then runs into the whole putting Luis Robert at DH. And how
Why
much
do you
is he going to DH?
Why do you tender Andrew Vaughn a contract to make him a backup here?
Well, I wouldn't say he's strictly a backup, but I'm saying more like 120 games, 125 games as opposed to 150.
I mean, we knew he was probably going to platoon with someone. I think Joey Gallo's probably an upgrade over Gavin Sheets. I'm just looking at last 4 years on StatHead, but Andrew Vaughn's outperformed him. Obviously, age is catching up in almost every single category. However, he's beat him in WAR and home runs, stolen bases, and OBP, and that's it since Vaughn entered the league. A lot of that is due to the extra 100 games that Andrew Vaughn has participated in. But
there's that too.
I think Joe. I kind of like the Joey Gallo ad if he's going to play more first base. Doesn't go to the outfield very much.
Yeah, especially when they already have 5 outfielders on the roster.
Yeah, because who are you going to sit? I was asking Steve this yesterday, Bez. Is the White Sox #1 offseason target Austin Slater going to get enough at bats this year?
That's why I don't see a real path for Gallo to make this team. And when that news dropped, I had a quick article about that. And I just don't see a path for him there unless he just shows that his bat and his power comes back in spring training. I have a hard time seeing him make it.
Steven?
Yeah, I think the odds are against Gallo making this club out of spring training, unless you do have like an Andrew Vaughn injury, or while they're in Cactus League play. Which, look, as we all have seen over the course of the last few years, this team does not really have the ability to get out of the Cactus League unscathed from an injury standpoint. So
they are down in Eloy Jimenez, though.
They are down in Eloy Jimenez. Yes, I think that's going to be helpful in that aspect of things.
He's in the best shape of his life, by the way. I don't know if you saw those reports.
I'm sure he is. Although
he lost about the 20 pounds that Miguel Vargas gained.
Also, it was just a transfer thing, right?
It was a transfer thing.
Okay. Well, nevertheless, I personally don't see Gallo making this team, like I said, unless there's a injury to Andrew Vaughn, as we get closer towards the season here. But, we'll see what happens, I guess. Like I said, you're signing a bunch of guys and you're going to see what sticks.
And I mean, great question by Matt Redacted. Why even tender Vaughn a contract in the first place is a great question.
I was against it, and I
Same.
said there was no need to bring him back. I saw enough. You know, I would have preferred they non-tender him and then like sign Carlos Santana for a year.
The Twins got Ty France for $1 million.
Right. I mean, it's just
Would that have completed Santana's circle through the AL Central?
I believe I no,
Has
he
he
hasn't
played
gotten to
for the
Detroit.
Royals?
He played for the Royals. Yes, he
Royals.
has not gotten to Detroit yet.
Okay. That was the one I was unsure of, but I mean, it would have been nice to see a White Sox killer in a White Sox uniform.
Well, we did that once with James Tomey. I mean, so that did happen.
That worked.
It worked.
He had a lot of home runs.
I mean,
and they didn't happen against us.
You know,
you just can't handle the truth on that one. Apparently,
he's a fucking Cleveland Indian.
Yep, there it is. Steve's first time getting mad in season 7, right there. And that was just after Matt was out there saying Steve's rebirth as a positive outlook guy is uncool and soft.
Take that, Matt.
There we go. We got him all riled up for Matt there. Another name that's on this list that was an interesting signing, at least in my opinion, was Brandon Drury. He's a name that I really liked early on in his career. Kind of forgot this guy was around, but could be a guy that if he has a good spring, potentially makes this roster and does a little third base DH action himself. Again, we're stacking up that the corner positions and the DH guys. Steve, does that sound familiar to something that we've talked about before on this show?
It sounds very, very familiar. But again, it's not as if they have those positions solidified. So
they don't.
You can fuck around and try to find something out. You know, I know everyone says fuck around and find out with a negative connotation. This might be one of those situations where you can fuck around and maybe find something out from a positive perspective. Who knows?
Just throwing shit against the wall until something sticks.
I mean,
it seems like
he's not the.
I feel like that should be the marketing slogan for this season. Throw it against the wall and see what sticks. White Sox baseball 2025.
We're just here.
This is where we're at, boys.
I mean, there's not really much to talk about Brandon Drury, but do you think he could surprise us? Is there somebody else that jumps out more to you guys from the NRI or minor league deal list?
I wanted Drury 2 years ago. That would have helped in 2022 when, we could have shuttled him around the infield when guys were hurt and whatnot. That would have helped. But, I mean, last year he looks pretty cooked. He had a hamstring problem. Another tough path with, they've got a glut of middle infielders, both on the major league roster and guys who haven't even been added yet. So, I just like the fact that he's here to make in that case.
I like the fact that he's here to at least make Ramos and Vargas potentially have to earn their spot. And if that was Getz's intention the entire offseason was to make some of these younger guys earn their spots with a name that's played Major League Baseball, I don't think that's the worst strategy either. Kind of could potentially help set the tone, as you said earlier, Besnik, for some of the younger guys, make them uncomfortable a little bit, the name with a little more pedigree than themselves. So, I mean, I like it on paper. Is it going to work out? Who knows? I mean, he could come in and go 0 for 15 and get bounced from camp in one of the first roster cuts.
Yeah, it definitely couldn't hurt to have him out there, kick the tires and see if he's got anything left. And maybe, that gives you a pretty good barometer to look at the way he's playing, a washed-up veteran versus
thermometer.
Huh?
It's pronounced thermometer.
Barometer. You ever heard of a barometer?
You've never seen the Seinfeld episode?
I'm not recalling that one at the moment.
Bez.
The joke didn't land. All right, let's move to the next topic, huh, Tom?
Yep, that's what we're gonna do. Well, we've talked about Joey Gallo. We talked a little bit about Brandon Drury, and I think we've kind of covered everything with Michael Taylor. I will say I did like that pickup as well. In our last section that we really got to cover here before we get out of here, it's a bit of unfortunate news, not something that we really want to talk about, but unfortunately, news did break. I believe this was over the weekend, last week, somewhere in there. Came out of Scott Merkin, who had heard and done an interview with 2005 World Series champion White Sox closer Bobby Jenks, diagnosed with stage 4 stomach cancer. He is currently over in Spain, I believe, according to Merkin's Portugal. He's in Portugal with his family. He went over there. I know last season he was in Crestwood with the Windy City Thunderbolts, a fine establishment there they got there in Crestwood, and he was managing that team. But he is receiving treatment for stage 4 stomach cancer. Not something that we wanted to hear, especially for he's one of my favorite White Sox of all time. I don't know about you guys. Just an incredible piece of that 2005 World Series team. It got the last out when it mattered. And that's something that in all of our lifetimes, we've only seen happen once. So his, play there and, mentioned in the call, ground ball over the head of Jenks. He is engraved in White Sox fans' memories, definitely going through a little bit of a difficult time. There's some pretty inspirational quotes from him in the story from Scott Merkin, just about his current battle and what he's doing. I did check and see he's still listed as the manager of the Windy City Thunderbolts. I don't know when their season gets underway. I don't know if he's planning to come back here, if he's taking a season off, or what's going to happen with some of that. I know they did do a bobblehead for him last season, and there was some driven attendance of White Sox fans going to the Windy City Thunderbolts games to get a glimpse of Bobby Jenks. So not sure what's going to happen there. Obviously, his health is going to come first. However, very, very unfortunate news. It's something that we'll be keeping an eye on, as it is the anniversary of that World Series team. And there was a lot of planned get-togethers, the Mark Burley statue, a couple other things that I would assume Bobby Jenks, had he been in the Chicagoland area, would be in attendance for. So it'll be interesting to see if we get a glimpse of Bobby. Just horrible news, guys. Any thoughts on Bobby?
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, Anthony, he was the pitcher that was on the mound when the most important out in franchise history was recorded. And you just hope that he's able to beat this thing. I think I read the article. I think one of the quotes that he said was that I'm not going to die in Portugal. That's I
never change, Bobby.
Yeah, I mean that's just kind of who Bobby Jenks was, and in a lot of ways, that's kind of the mindset you have to have as a closer, and you have to have a short memory. And when adversity hits you, you got to remember that hey, tomorrow's a new day, and you get a chance to get outs 25, 6, and 7 all over again. So you got to wipe that out of your mind, and you can't sit there and dwell on it. And you just hope that he's got the right medical team and involved in this, and hopefully they caught it early enough that they have an actionable plan that they can address the situation. Because any celebrations that they have where they bring back members of the 05 team for this year, and we know they're going to milk the hell out of it, it will not be the same without number 45 there. And so hopefully he's able to get through this, and it would be great for him to be able to come back to the ballpark later on this summer at some point, take part in the festivities and the nostalgia, because he was a major part of that magical summer 20 years ago.
Yeah. I echo all of that, and fuck cancer. And we talked a lot about just the White Sox hopefully getting a prospect or some player that just comes out of nowhere. And one of the first people you think of in White Sox history is Bobby Jenks. Talk about, was he a waiver wire pickup from the Angels? Was the third closer we were on that year. And we were really lucky to have him, and we wouldn't have won the World Series without him. So prayers up for Bobby.
Very well said, gentlemen, and I echo both of your statements as well. Just incredibly tough to kind of get that news right before the season, and especially all the festivities that were planned for this year. So I know he'll be thought of by White Sox fans and in the baseball community as he fights this terrible disease. Guys, that is just about all the time we have for today. Before we close it out, I definitely want to go around and do some final thoughts. Before we do that, thank you to everybody who's tuned into this show and has tuned into the show for the past 6 seasons. It's incredible that we've made it here to season 7. We're going to be ramping the show back up as spring training gets underway. First games this weekend. I believe the White Sox take on the Chicago Cubs on Saturday. And the games will be underway. I know that there was, a changeover in the TV network for those of you who've been living under a rock and don't know that the games will not be on NBC Sports Chicago. You're going to need to either get an antenna or pay the $30 a month to watch CHSN as we have been doing. As we have been doing, I know Besnik, you are a huge CHSN guy. Throughout the basketball season, and
love their content.
There is a third option there, Anthony.
There is a third option. There's a third option.
The third option is you can select Comcast as your cable provider.
You can't select Comcast.
CHSN is on Comcast.
No, it is not.
I thought they had. Or no, it's not. It's Direct TV. It's Direct TV. Okay, I'm mixing up my overpriced.
Which is what I have.
My bad.
I think I'm one of the few people in the Chicago area who has Direct TV stream.
You might be one of the few, but it's definitely been a bit of a struggle as a fan that needs to consume Blackhawks hockey over the hockey season. So I'm on the antenna right now. Steven, are you going to be ponying up for Direct TV, or what was your baseball watching plans this season?
I'm going to take a look at the price points on the Direct TV stream options that are out there, because YouTube TV, they had a price increase again. So a lot of times what you can do is you can make the switch, get that introductory rate. Sometimes they'll lock it in for 2 years, and if it's going to be less than what I'm paying for YouTube TV, I might as well just do it. And then this way I know, hey, I'll be able to get the games and I won't have to fuck around with this antenna bullshit or paying monthly for this app that I'm sure there's going to be bugs with. I don't know of anybody that has actually paid the money for the app to watch it through like a Roku or whatever, but I'm just sure, given the launch of this thing and how bad it has been, it can't possibly work smoothly. There's just no fucking way.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how people react as we get closer to opening day, and I have a feeling that we're going to be in for some interesting takes on the internet on this current TV situation.
Will people still be openly telling you that they're not watching the White Sox? Is that still a thing people do?
I believe that is still a thing that people do online. I know you're not online anymore, Stephen, but I've seen people actively stating that they are not watching the White Sox this season. So maybe they won't have to deal with the CHSN nonsense that has so far been not great through Bulls and Blackhawks season. But being interesting to see how this all shakes out. I can't imagine the TV numbers are going to be that great, TV ratings for the Chicago White Sox this season, regardless of what network they're playing on. But that's about all I've got on the CHSN. Guys, final thoughts. Go round table. Baz, I'll toss it to you first, and then we will get on out of here.
Let's start the damn thing. Let's get some games going. Pitchers and catchers reporting is like fun for like 20 minutes. You're like, yay, pitchers and catchers report. And then you're like, oh, this is boring. They're just fucking catching shit. So let's play some games. Let's get started. That's it. That's it. Let's get started.
Saturday is the most important game of Will Venable's life. There you go.
There it is.
He has to come out there and hashtag set the tone. if we've learned nothing over the course of the last few years, if you don't set the tone, bad things can happen. So, Will, you're a new manager. This is your first gig that you held out for this one. Go out there and set the tone. Make it happen. I want a Cactus League banner.
There he is. There he is.
He's back.
He brought himself hashtag back for like the last segment of the show, Bez. I'm impressed.
He did. He should he keeps asking a lot of questions about what people are doing online or saying online or what they might be saying online. Like, just be online, dude. Just be online.
I will say this, not being online, hashtag would recommend.
Oh, yeah? All right.
Yeah.
All right.
He's a big not being online guy, but Bez, we'll take this offline and we'll play some wagers on when he returns to the X machine.
Not going to happen.
Yeah, let's circle back on that, Tom.
We'll take it outside and we'll circle back. Everybody, thank you for tuning in to Sox on Tap, Season 7, Episode 1. New Sox, same questions. This was it's fun to be back, guys. Appreciate both of you hopping on the mic with me. Appreciate everybody who hopped in here. You can follow the show online at Sox on Tap. You can follow Besnik at Bez Beyond the Pen. You follow me at Tony on Tap. You can't follow Steve. He's unfollowable. And then you can follow the network at ontapsportsnet.com. Be sure you're checking out ontapsportsnet.com for all of your Chicago sports literature and podcasting needs. Both of these guys do some excellent White Sox written coverage. Highly recommend checking that out throughout the season and off season all the time. But that's all we've got for today. As we have always closed the show down, White Sox forever.
White Sox for life.
White Sox forever.